and their policy is to obliterate it.
Yeah.
And as a Kiwi, I couldn't imagine it, because we're surrounded by ocean, our nearest neighbour's a long way away, and it's Australia, and my heart went out to the Israeli people as a consequence, and it's still there, because I can't imagine having countries surrounding my land and being dedicated to my destruction.
Yeah.
Point one. Point two is, I'm very concerned about the way terror is being indoctrinated into people in parts of the world. I actually don't believe it's Islam, so I've got no problem with the Islamic faith. I think it's quite an amazing faith, and like in the Middle Ages when Europe was dark, Islam was
more Spain.
Yeah. Well, more particularly, it was
Baghdad.
It was mathematics, trade, culture, fabulous. But there are some mad and bad people professing the Christian faith. I think there's some mad and bad people professing the Islamic faith who are raising children to kill and to hate. And I have a big problem with that, and I have a concern for what it must be like to be Israel. And I do, that is happening.
I think some people's concern, coming back to the terrorism issue, that people in the Middle Eastern world look at what is happening in Palestine and in Israel, and America's support of Israel, which has a much more equipped military than the occupied Palestinian territories, and that is fueling resentment towards
of
the
course
US
it is, but it doesn't make it right. That's like saying, it's America's policies that caused 9/11. I've heard that many, many times. I think that's rubbish. I think it's bullshit. And so you can sit there and people can say, look, it's Israel's policy and America's policy backing them up, and therefore it's fueling this resentment. Look, there's 1,001 reasons for people to be resentful. It doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make their actions right. And so I will not buy that for a minute.
Absolutely, I'm not suggesting that it makes the actions right, but if there is something that is fueling people's resentment, is it not worth looking at that to understand it? Rather than, you have issues with the way the US is waging its war on terror, but the reaction, the response to the US administration and to the West hasn't grown in a vacuum. What do you think is driving that tension?
I don't know. It's too complex for me to understand. I actually can't comprehend the minds that would, and what the thinking is. I've been there, and I've looked on it, and it's a mystery to me. And I'll tell you another thing that is a mystery to me. I recently went to Cambodia and Vietnam, which are wonderful, wonderful countries. And I couldn't get over their lack of resentment. And that puzzled me as much. I'm thinking, gee whiz, if I'd suffered under Pol Pot, or if I'd been a Vietnamese and I've suffered under the French and bombed and all these fighting, I think I'd be pretty upset. They're not. It seemed to me. And so I was wandering around the place chatting to Vietnamese and Cambodians that could speak English, and trying to discover why they didn't have that resentment, and I couldn't get to the bottom of it. And I don't understand why some people do have this huge resentment. I don't know. But what's the solution for it? Well, I think the solution is you do stick to civil action, like having a civil society and respecting people's rights, and going about with the best heart that you can do and the best actions that you can do. So I don't fill myself with hate and resentment.
Okay, fair enough.
In Parliament or in life.
Yeah.
You know, like, what more can I do? And honestly, I don't. I mean, I meet bitter and twisted people in New Zealand all the time, in a way, about things that have happened to them and things that happened to their ancestors. And you think, well, I don't know. I don't understand it. Why don't you move on? But
I guess the situation for the Palestinians is that it's still happening. You know, like, it's easier to release your resentment after the fact, you know, for Vietnamese.
Let me go another way.
New Zealand and Australia have left.
Let me go another way. There are people who have an agenda of violence.
Sure.
And they like to go around and foster. And, you know, we see that. And you know, take the attack on the spy bases. What was that about?
I haven't spoken to people specifically, but
I mean, it's a great example, isn't it? Because
it's about New Zealand supporting. I think about New Zealand supporting the US in the quote war on terror,
it's not.
providing information to them.
It's not for a minute.
Have you spoken to them? Do you know what it's about?
It's about this, isn't it? You see, you're arguing, oh well, it's their issue, their policy. Right, but they can stand on any soapbox, they can ring talkback radio, they can write letters, they can come and see their MP, but they chose to invade and damage property, right? That's the thing that I'm questioning. Yeah. And so why did they do that? Oh, because they wanted to foster the debate, they wanted to create the resentment, to create all this, but they weren't prepared to have it as an argument where they'd respect other people's property and other people's rights, and that's why I don't listen to them. I'm happy to hear the argument, but they didn't want to make an argument. They'd rather actually go out there and damage property. I'm not interested in that.
Property rights are very important to you, aren't they?
They're the basis of a civil and free society. So yes, they are. But, you know, I mean, you don't have, if you can't own something, your house, your business, your body. And if people can just come along and take it and abuse it at will, then you're not living in a free society.
I just want to jump back quickly. Basically, a lot of people I talk to and a lot of the media I read, there's this real kind of, whether it's a beat up from the media, you know, whether there's agendas, I don't know, but a lot of people feel there is a real urgency about climate change. People feel like, for instance, the International Panel on Climate Change concluded that if we don't make some serious changes in the very near future, then there are going to be quite severe environmental and humanitarian consequences. There's also a feeling that the New Zealand government, which is the one that New Zealanders can most easily influence, is sitting on their hands.
They won't do it. I'll tell you that now. It won't happen. The emissions trading scheme won't happen.
No. And the petrol increases will be deferred. What can the ACT Party do to address this concern, or do you think it's unfounded? Do you think that sense of urgency is unfounded, or do you think that New Zealand should just wait and let other countries?
I think the sense of urgency is definitely unfounded, and I mean, I guess it's my background.
Which isn't in climate science.
No, but I've been interested in environmental science and have worked in it professionally, not all my adult life, but going back to 1972. And so I have seen, I guess, a lot of environmental scares come and go. I first understood the prospect of anthropogenic global warming when I was at high school. So, funnily enough, in 1975, the concern was, on balance, that it might be a cooling that's occurring, not a warming.
Yep.
None of that means that it isn't true. Just because, you know, we've had scares in the past that haven't, you know, come to fruition doesn't mean the next scare isn't going to be. But it has been something that I've been aware of for a long, long time. And it is something that I have certainly in the past studied quite closely up until 1992, 93. I was still going to conferences where, you know, it was the agenda item. So I've had a long, years and years, most people have only got worried about it, you know, a year ago. The media struggle with pictures of what global warming would look like, or climate change, and so they will show a glacier falling into the sea and sort of present a scary image that suggests that that's happening all around the world.